Yeah, it's frustrating to have two teams that are so popular and to not feel good enough about a third to
Hmm.
pivot away or to not have the pivot that you want available. In this case, that would be the Colts. And I used them last week, which is fantastic because as you described it, the feeling of picking on Thursday for Survivor and locking it in before the weekend,
Yeah.
it puts you at ease when the Sunday of chaos rains down upon the rest of the pool. It is quite wonderful. The thing about the Steelers that makes me interested in them now and only now is that I think, based on the Mike Clay projections we talk about all the time, this is the last time Pittsburgh will have a win probability above 50% until week 17. And it's going to get all the way up to, you guessed it, 51% in week 17. There are no other good times to use the Steelers. So if you're looking at the Steelers versus the Ravens, and the pot odds are pretty similar if the usage holds up as we get closer to lock, you may as well use the team that you have no other interest in using.
Hmm.
By comparison, you can look at the Ravens and you find a few other games. Like they're a 70% probability to win for this week. They're 66% next week, right? They're 57% in week 12, which could be actually usable that week. Week 12 looks like it's going to be miserably difficult if we make it to that point. So just having a little more long-term value with the Ravens and other spots where I might want to use them makes me inclined to say, yeah, I'm definitely in on the Steelers this week as my one true pick because their win probability, I believe, is fourth highest in the entire league. The Cardinals, the Bills, the Bucks, they're all ahead of them. Well, I can't use those teams. I've already used them. So I'm
Hmm.
using my best remaining team in this spot.
And another thing we should point out here, you say all the way into week 17 is where you finally find the Steelers with a win percentage over 50%, and it's at 51% for that win probability. That's also at home against the Browns. It's like that might not be 51% by the time we actually get to that game. And even if it were, how comfortable would you be using the Steelers in that spot? Now, I will say, you make it to week 17 in a survivor pool, especially in some of these pools. I'm in a pool where starting in week 11, we have to pick two games correctly. By the time you get to week 17, you can't guarantee that you're going to be super comfortable with the team you're picking. That's just the nature of how Survivor works. But I mean, the Browns are a better team than the Steelers. I would sort of want to pick the Browns if I had to pick someone. If I'm, projecting 7 weeks ahead, I would feel like I would rather have the Browns in that spot than the Steelers. It all comes back to say that the Steelers are my one true pick as well for all the reasons you laid out. This is the time to pick the Steelers. If I had the Colts, if I still had the Colts available, I used them last week. We both used them in that Thursday night game against the Jets. And some of my other pools, I used them earlier in the season when they had, I can't remember if it was the Texans or the Jaguars that they were matching up with back in week 6, but it was one of those two teams. And I took them in that spot. It was the Texans. It was the Texans. They went 31-3. If I still had the Colts available, I could see an argument for using them and hoping for a Lions upset because I don't think a Lions upset is all that far fetched. Obviously, it is unlikely, but because of the pot odds that are at play here, I mean, you could knock out 75% of your pool. There just haven't been that many opportunities to use the Steelers too, DVR. And this is anecdotal. I admit that. I'm in one survivor pool, has 44 people remaining in it, 44 entries remaining. 34 of those entries still have the Steelers available. A lot of those 34 are going to be on the Steelers. That's just a guarantee. One of those entries is mine. And so even though I feel like the Steelers are the play, because when else are we going to use the Steelers? 30 of those 34 could be on the Steelers. And if the Lions somehow pull it off and my team advances, then I am sitting pretty. So that is some of the gymnastics that we're dealing with here this week. I still, though, for our purposes here, I'm locking in the Steelers. And I will say, I don't think I'm going to have the stones to quite make that play in my pool. I will probably be locking in the Steelers in that one as well. But it's something we should be thinking about.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Lions' schedule the rest of the way and trying to figure out when they are going to throw a big wrench into our pools. Maybe it's on Thanksgiving against the Bears. It
Yes,
seems like,
yes.
road trips to
Mhm.
Pittsburgh and Cleveland, those are tough spots. But when the Lions win, or if the Lions get a win, it seems a lot more likely to happen at home. I think about that scare they put into the Ravens back in week 3. Justin Tucker hit
Yeah.
a 98-yard field goal to win at the end of the game, right? Like it
Yep.
took that for them to escape that scenario. Those situations seem much more likely to come up at Ford Field. I
Mhm.
don't think it happens against Arizona in week 15. So I think weeks 12 and 13, divisional matchups against the Bears and Vikings, both at home. There's your Lions win or your Lions 2 wins most likely. But this situation does set up a lot like the situation with the Browns and the Jets 2 weeks ago. based on pot odds and based on the actual point spread,
Mhm.
the Steelers aren't as big of a favorite as you would
Sorry, really,
think.
really quick. The Bengals and the Jets. You mean the Bengals and the
Or
Jets?
the Bengals and Jets. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. What's
All
with
good.
me today? It's a lot like that scenario from a pot odds perspective and then the spread perspective. So like, I saw those warning signs 2 weeks ago and I ran right by them anyway. Perhaps to my own peril, I'm willing to run by them again, but a lot of it has to do with just the lack of value in the Steelers beyond this week and the fact that my pivot is not there. The team I would really want to use
Yep.
is the Colts, and I can't use them because I've already burned them.